What's going on, everybody? All right, Wednesday's Q&A day. Excited about this one. Some great questions as usual. Got some cool stuff coming up this week. I've got the Midlife Community Show and Tell episode coming out later this week. I just opened it for the first. I opened all of the pictures and information that you all submitted from your December pickups, and oh my goodness, there was a lot of awesome stuff. Now, the other thing about this one, remember, starting this month, our friends over at the Penny Sleever are offering out four $25 gift certificates to anyone who submitted a card to be a participant in the Community Show and Tell. So when that episode comes out later in the week, that episode takes quite a bit of time. So you got to be patient with me. But Friday or Saturday, I will have that episode come out. And included in it will be the 4 winners of the $25 gift certificates to the Penny Sleever. Great materials over there, great supplies, affordable supplies. Hey, very cool that my buddy Isaac wants to continue to be a part of the Midlife community. That said, let's take a look at our first question this week for our Q&A.
Hi, Greg. When you first began your YouTube channel a few years ago, you had a specific budget each month, which eventually it became a bit larger. You've bought some amazing cards. However, like the Brooks Robinson, Walter Johnson, the Ernie Banks, you always wanted to, among other great cards. So my question is, would you say you're satisfied with where your card collection is? Or what does fulfillment and satisfaction look like and feel like to you? Thanks.
All right. Andrew, Hall of Fame commenter, asks a great question here. And you know, over the last 2.5 years, because I started this channel just under 2.5 years ago. It was, October of 2022 that it started. So it's been 2 years and 3 or 4 months, right? My collection has absolutely changed. It has absolutely, in my opinion, improved. And over the last couple of years, I've picked up some amazing cards. I mean, I have some really awesome T206 cards, like the Walter Johnson that he mentioned. Christy Mathewson that I showed that the other day on my top 50. I've added, since I started my channel, I've added the Brooks Robinson rookie. I got a Yogi Berra rookie. I've gotten some really awesome cards. And so, you know, one of the channels I like to watch is my buddy Iconic Al. He got one of my YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame votes. And him and his brother do an ongoing podcast, basically conversation they call the Brothers Duo, which I love. And they talk about continuing to shape your collection, trimming away the branches that don't really fit anymore, growing new branches in areas that you're more interested in. And that's kind of a perfect example. And they use the example of a bonsai tree, you know, like the perfect, what was it, Karate Kid Part 2, where there was like the perfect bonsai tree that Daniel-san and Mr. Miyagi. By the way, Mr. Miyagi went to the high school that I used to teach at, Armio High School, Fairfield, California. Mr. Miyagi went there. But anyway, I think it's a great example. But here's the thing about a bonsai tree. It's never done. It's never, ever done, right? If you ask the best golfer in the world, if you ask Tiger Woods at his peak, Tiger, why do you still practice? You're the best golfer in the world. You win all sorts of tournaments. He would say, it can always get better. It can always improve in certain areas. It's never perfect. No, I played golf. I played golf this 3-day weekend. And my my game is not where I want it. It can definitely improve. And in fact, I was texting with Mike Junk Wax Hero the other day, and he was talking about golf, and he said, "What kind of golfer are you?" In fact, I sent him a video of Molly golfing because Molly's really good. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, what's her handicap?" And then he got to, "What's your handicap, Greg?" And I was like, "It's been as low. My handicap has gotten to about as low as 2.5, but right now it's probably like a 12. So certainly my game is far from where I'd like it to be. But even when I was at my best, even when I was down to a 2.5, it absolutely could still improve. There were absolutely still areas that needed to get better. And that's how I look at my collection. Is my collection is this thing that will never be over. If it were, that's one of the negatives to set builders. You know, it's like when I finish my pirate set, when I finish it, will I just be done? Or will I always be looking to upgrade? I'm not sure yet. Right now, step one is completed. There are 50 cards in the set, and I have been acquiring as many different ones as I can. When I get all 50, am I going to start trying to upgrade, or am I going to just be content? I don't know. We'll see. But I can tell you, as far as my card collection is concerned, I'll never be done. That's what makes it a lifelong project. That's what makes it a lifelong hobby. If there was a point where I got, I'm done, I got everything I wanted, that wouldn't be fun. Have I gained satisfaction with the development of my collection over the last couple of years? Absolutely. It is definitely better than it was. Will it continue to improve? I certainly hope so. Will some of the additions be things that you all think are improvements? Maybe. But as long as I think it's continuing to improve, then I'm having fun. And I'm not planning on stopping. So just like Tiger, and I'm not Tiger. Let me say that. I am not, my collection is nowhere like Tiger Woods' golf game was. I would say that I have a long ways to go. And I look forward to that. But do I stop occasionally and look around and look at my collection and go, man, I've really accumulated some pretty cool stuff. Absolutely. Do I like the progress? Absolutely. But it's sort of like a bonsai tree, which is always changing and always needs a little bit of shaping, or just like a golf, a person's golf game. It's never perfect. It's never done. It's always got somewhere that could get better. So while I'm happy with my progress, it's not even close to done. I got a long ways to go, and I can't wait to continue to work towards where I want it to get.
Question: why aren't baseball card collectors and baseball fans more upset by the fact that Dave Parker was caught using PDDs, performance diminishing drugs?
Okay, so let's take a look at this one. First off, Dave Parker has been elected to the Hall of Fame. You know, he was part of the Veterans Committee last year. This last year, it was announced a month ago. I'm happy for Dave Parker. I thought Dave Parker deserved to be in. On my buddy Ray from Philly did a kind of a Hall of Fame discussion with myself, Chris from Missouri, Dan Vintage Baseball PC, and Ray himself. We did this conversation and we talked about who we thought should get in from that. And I thought Dave Parker should. He got in. Happy for him. Why are people not more upset about the fact that he had some performance diminishing drug use? Now, first of all, I think when people get upset is when people do things that give them an unfair advantage, right? The reason that people are upset about, we could go down the list, and I know you guys are looking at me thinking about the name, but let's just use Jose Canseco, okay? So the reason people are upset that Jose Canseco used steroids is because it's not fair to the people who didn't use steroids. He had an advantage that other people didn't take. And so that put him at an advantage. Now, if somebody were to do something that puts them at a disadvantage, let's say that a player took the field without cleats on, that would put them at a disadvantage. Would we say, how dare you not put cleats on? Because by not putting cleats on, you're making it harder for yourself. So if somebody's doing something that makes it more difficult, then I don't think that people are going to get upset because it's the advantage that we have issues with. If one kid in my class is cheating on the test because he has a little cheat sheet that he's hiding under his desk, he has an unfair advantage. If the kid next to him stayed up all night playing video games and didn't study, he has a disadvantage. Who am I going to get upset with? I'm going to get upset with the kid who has the advantage. Now, the other part of it is, I think in this country, to a large extent, we see a lot of drug use. We see a lot recreational drug use specifically, and alcohol, and we see it as an illness, right? And that illness or that disability prevents people from achieving. And I'm not an expert on how those illnesses work and addictions, and I don't know much about that. To be totally honest with you, I just don't. But it's the kind of thing that we would never get upset with somebody who has other sorts of illnesses. And so if this is an illness, how can we get upset at someone for it? So it didn't help Dave Parker to achieve more. If anything, it made Dave Parker achieve less. So that's potentially on him. But then again, it's a whole, is it an illness? Is it not an illness? Again, that's not my level of expertise. The other part is there are a lot of beloved players who did things that hurt them. Mickey Mantle battled alcoholism. There's lots of stories about Mantle. There's lots of stories about Ruth. There's lots of stories about a lot of guys. I mean, remember Josh Hamilton? Remember that guy battling his addiction issues? And then he just has a couple of seasons where he's able to fight those and battle those off, and he has these monster seasons. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of us, if we take an honest look in the mirror, we look and we go, we all kind of fight some demons. And we all, I hope, at least I try really hard to overcome the demons that I fight. So when somebody kind of falls to some of those demons that they battle, to then use that and hold it against them, I don't know. Now, when you're participating in things that are not, and I think this is a hard question, if I'm being honest. I think this is a hard question, but I think the answer is kind of easy, which is it didn't help him, it hurt him. So how could we hold that against him as far as his achievements? But I do think part of the reason that he didn't get in sooner is because of some of the off-the-field allegations and off-the-field things that he potentially participated in. I again continue to be a guy who is innocent till proven guilty. And quite frankly, I'm not a person who goes out and tries to investigate all of the negatives of things that people have participated in. So I've heard a few rumors about some of the drug use potentially that Dave Parker did, but I am not an expert at it. And I wasn't that interested in reading some articles about it recently to find out more about them, because it to me, it's not really something that is a big deal to me as far as how it affects him getting into the Hall of Fame or not. So I totally hear the question, but to me, the student that I have issues with is the student who's getting an unfair advantage, not the student who put themselves themselves at a disadvantage. So that's where I focus my issues with things like that.
Hi, Greg. Carl from Oz. As you may recall, I'm heading to Strongsville with my 15-year-old grandson. He's into vintage. I'm specifically interested in 1955 Topps doubleheaders. Do you have any particular dealers I should be seeking out? Also, any specific advice to a first-time visitor? Love your show. As you know, it has kept me sane and grounded this last 12 months. Keep up the good work, Carl.
All right, Carl. How's it going, Carl? Other side of the world. I mean, Carl lives in Australia. We have members of Midlife Nation who live in multiple continents. Multiple continents. And Carl lives in the continent of Australia. Carl is a big baseball fan. In fact, we texted a little bit when he was in LA for the World Series. He went to a couple of the World Series games as a Yankee fan. Totally loved that. Carl's a great guy, and you've probably seen a couple of things that he sent me. Most notably, he has sent me some really cool cricket cards, which is big in Australia. Now, Carl, I look forward to meeting you in Strongsville. I look forward to meeting anybody who attends Strongsville in Strongsville. That said, let me answer your question specifically. First, the thing about the Strongsville show is it's not like the National. It's not so large that it's overwhelming. Literally, the whole show takes place inside of the size of an ice rink. They drain the ice rink, and then they set up tables. I mean, if I were guessing, I don't know, what do they have? 100 tables, 120 tables? It's not a massive show. The thing that's crazy about it is the amount of vintage and the exclusivity of vintage. It is 99% vintage cards, and it's some of the top vintage dealers in the country in one place. To me, if you're not going to get there and go, I didn't have enough time to find any of this set or this set, there will be enough time, assuming you're going for more than one day. If you're going for more than one day, you're going to have no problem getting through the whole show. And it's not like one of the dealers is going to have a stack of certain cards and you wouldn't be aware of it. So that's the first thing. Second thing, there are a couple of dealers, in particular, somebody who I would expect to have a lot of those cards would be William Chappell. He's a big dealer that carries huge volumes of that stuff. Now, just to give you an idea of his insane inventory, is at last year's Strongsville show. I'm sitting there and I'm hanging out with Darren, and we start kind of going around, and it was toward the end of our second day, and I'm like, I just want to look and see what players Bill Chappell has in that stack of these caramel cards, these 1930s caramel cards, because I don't know, maybe there's like a Roger Peckinpah in there or something that I don't have. So I'm just going to look through the stack. And it was like a tall stack with rubber bands around it. And I start looking through it, and it's like in the stack, there's like, this is insane. Walter Johnson, Rogers Hornsby, Ty Cobb, like, and my mind was like, my head was exploding, because I was like, these are showcase cards. These are like center of the showcase, but he's got so much amazing stuff that it's like the fifth card down in the stack with a rubber band around it in one of his showcases. So his inventory is just off the charts. When you get there, you'll see you don't have to worry about possibly missing something. There is time to go through it thoroughly. And again, I've talked about this a fair amount, but the thing about Strongsville that is different than the National is the National has so many tables that you could absolutely miss some tables. You could absolutely miss some of the things in some of the cases at some of the tables. That is 100% possible because it's got, I don't know, what, 1,000 tables? But that's not the problem here. The thing here is you have time. It's not overwhelming. To anyone going to Strongsville, I said this on my podcast, not podcast. Darren and I, in our off-topic episodes, we recorded recently, and the first half of it, part of it, came out on his channel on Tuesday, and then the other part of it is going to come out later in the week on my channel, our conversation. And we're always talking about things like this. And we kind of talked about Strongsville a little bit. And the thing about Strongsville is it's as much about hanging out, seeing other people's cards, sharing pickups, that kind of stuff, as it is the cards. So there's a lot of camaraderie. It's like some people go to the football game on Sunday because they want to see the football game. And then some people go to the football game on Sunday and they get there at the crack of dawn because they're tailgating all day. They go to the game. After the game, they tailgate some more. It's a whole like social thing around their friends. Strongsville's more like that to me. It's more like the person who tailgates all day and does the game. It's as much of a social interaction as it is a card show. And it just happens to have probably 6 or 7 or 8 of the biggest vintage dealers all in the same small show, which is insane.
Question: why are cards of pitchers generally much cheaper than hitters? Aside from Nolan Ryan and Sandy Koufax, it seems like you can find a lot of value in guys like Warren Spahn, Gaylord Perry, Early Wynn, etc.
All right, this is a question that I think a lot of us don't really know, but we certainly could guess. I did that live stream the other day, and we went through a list of which players will remain hobby relevant for indefinitely, and a couple of us had no pitchers on the list. No, there were people that didn't have Sandy Koufax or Walter Johnson or Cy Young or whoever, Nolan Ryan, whoever the pitchers were. And it's sort of like they don't really get the respect. Now, why is that? I don't know why that is. I don't think any of us really know why that is. So let me just throw out a few guesses. Number one, people tend to like offense. We like power. We like home runs. We don't really root for defense. I mean, if you look back at, take a different sport, basketball. If you look at like the 90s and the 2000s, there were 2 of the best defensive players ever playing. Dennis Rodman, unbelievable defensive player, and Dikembe Mutombo, unbelievable defensive player. Those 2 guys were, in my opinion, in the top 10 defensive players of all time. Not trying to start a debate, just throwing that out there. Now, the thing about that is their cards aren't that expensive. Their cards aren't that expensive. People are much more interested in Charles Barkley, Karl Malone. I'm using people from that era. Karl Malone, John Stockton. Not even that John Stockton's that beloved, but it's guys that score points. Dominique Wilkins, like offensive highlight reel guys. It's not the best defensive players. And pitchers are defense. They're defensive players. I think that's part of it. Another part of it, if you're a fan of a team, if you watch every single Mets game this year, okay? There are certain players you're going to see on TV every single night. And it's really easy to get to know that player and beloved that player because 162 times you're watching that player. But if you take a starting pitcher that stays healthy the whole season, what's he going to get? 35 starts? 30 starts? We'll call it 35. So out of 162 games, they're only going to be on the field 35, let's go crazy and say 40 times. 35 times that they're on the field, that they're on the TV, that you actually see them. And then when they're on, the starting pitcher, say they have a quality start, right? Every single time they pitch. So they pitch 6 innings. They're only on the field 2/3 of the game in the 35 or so times that they take the field. So they're on the field 20% of the time. And then when they're on the field, they're only on the field for 65% of those games. So our relationship as a fan of watching that player isn't nearly the same as the guy who's in the lineup every night, who is on the field all the time, who we see all the time. And when you think about cards, really, and I've mentioned this a lot, and I even mentioned it somewhat recently, it's really a popularity contest, right? The cards, the people who are the most collectible are the most popular. Doesn't mean they're the best player. It means they're the most popular players. And if you said, who's your favorite player? Now, I think I'm a bit of an anomaly, I was a Clemens fan. But a lot of people, they point to the guy they see every single night, not the guy they see 20% of the time. And in that 20% of the time, they only see them maybe 2/3 of the time. So I think the relationship that you build as a fan with an everyday player versus as a pitcher is not the same. And the cards that we're most attracted to are the people that we have a strong relationship to as a fan, and their popularity is based on that relationship. I think that's a lot of it. And that might be part of the reason for catchers too. Catchers take more off days than second baseman or first baseman. And catchers are covered in gear. They got their mask on, so they're less recognizable even when they are on the field. Now, you see them every pitch, but they're in like a disguise, right? They're like a ninja because they're covered. Their face is covered. Their body is covered. I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think that's also part of the reason why football cards haven't taken off as much, at least vintage football cards, is they're less recognizable. You don't see their face. You don't develop that. So I think that those are all components. But to be totally honest, I have no idea. And those are just some darts that I threw. But those are my guesses.
I just started collecting in November of 2024. Raising a family is costly, and it would have been irresponsible to start collecting sooner. With that said, my girls are having a blast cracking packs. We are in Wisconsin, and the national convention is in Chicago. I am thinking about going to it with the girls. My question is, have you been to the national before? And if so, what sorts of things should I look out for that will help me get good bang for my buck on a thin budget, say $500?
Well, first of all, I think it's fantastic that you've gotten into cards recently. And I also think it's fantastic that you are doing the card hobby with your kids, with your girls. Now, I love cards for kids because it teaches them so many life skills. It teaches them business skills. It teaches them speaking skills, interpersonal skills, strategy skills, money skills. There's so many things about it that I think are fantastic. to answer your question about the National in particular, let me just say a few things. How do you get the most bang for your buck? First, when you get to the National, it's like, to me, it's a massive card show, obviously. I mean, massive. Like, you could fit multiple football fields in the floor space that is going to be where cards are seen. It is literally, for me at least, and I'm just speaking for me. People in the comments can tell me where I'm off or what they think. But it's partly a museum experience. You know, people will fly across the world to go to the Smithsonian to see things that are rare, to see things that are amazing, to see things that are just these epic, iconic items. You know, you go to these museums, you'll fly across the world to go to the Louvre, right? You'll go fly across the country or the world to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Well, when you go to the National, you will see cards where it's literally, there are a lot of cards that are on display and it's like a museum. You could go to the National and you could just walk through all of the auction house setups and showcases and look through their cases and see, I mean, just some of the things. You know, at last year's National, I saw Joe Jackson rookie. I saw Joe Jackson autographs. I saw game used jerseys from Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. You see Honus Wagner T206s. You see, I mean, last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Judy Garland's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz were there. I mean, just autographs of anyone you can think of, game use stuff of anyone you can think of, cards in high grade that you can't even believe. And so if you didn't even buy anything and you just went and looked at some of this amazing stuff, like that in itself is it's worth that to me. Now, a lot of the dealers, they pay big money to set up at the National. So in my personal opinion, I haven't historically, and I've been to this National, and then I went to a National as a kid in San Francisco, and other similar big shows like this that I've been to on the West Coast. I never felt like the prices were particularly incredible. I've never felt like, oh my gosh, this is the buying opportunity because everything's dirt cheap. They're paying so much money to be there and to have their booth and to travel there and to have their employees helping them out that they're not just giving stuff away. That's not been my experience. I'm sure other people probably have different experiences. What it does is it allows you to see some of the things that you normally wouldn't see and get to actually look the cards over before you buy them. Like if you were to buy them in an online auction, if you were to buy them in one of these major auction houses. So for me, if you're going hoping to get crazy good deals, I don't know if that's what you're going to find. What I have found when I go to card shows, the best deals I ever find is when I go to a local card show and there's some guy who used to be into cards and he's ready to get out of cards and he's set up at the card show because he's ready to liquidate his collection. He no longer has an emotional attachment to it. He just wants to be done with it. It's the same reason why when you go to a garage sale, you can buy something for $3 that's worth $30 because the person is ready to get rid of it. I have found the best deals at local card shows from people who are not professional dealers. They're just former collectors ready to move on. And at the National, you don't see any of those. You have to be on waiting lists for years to get a booth at the National, and then it's really expensive. So these are all professional dealers that are going to be set up at the National. They're all there. This is like for the most part, their livelihood. And they know what they're doing. They know what they've got. They know what it's worth. And they're not looking to just get rid of it. they're looking to make the most that they can and cover their expenses. So should you go? I absolutely think you should go. You'll see some things you wouldn't see anywhere else. Should you go expecting to get some killer deals? You might get some killer deals, but I don't think it's a place that's full of killer deals. But that's just my take. Guys, if you have a question for an upcoming episode, please do not hesitate down below in the comments. Simply type out your question. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to type out a question and brings up a topic for us to talk about on these Wednesday Q&As. Couple cool videos coming out later this week. Again, an off-topic episode. If you haven't watched the one on Darren's channel, Return to Collecting, check that out. Check out the conversation I'm going to post here in the next couple of days. And then the Midlife Community show and tell. I got to tell you, I look for the first time. There are some really massive, amazing cards. And more people submitted cards than have ever submitted to this point. I look forward to it, and you won't want to miss it.